Hello and welcome to the StrongCast, where it is our goal to help you perform without limitations. We chat with athletes, experts, and innovators to get their insights on optimizing the movement experience. I'm your host, Dr. Neil Toussaint.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to StrongCast 22, dub. StrongCast is where we talk all things performance and longevity, and I am joined by Nick Vail. How's it going, Nick?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy you're on the podcast, and thanks for setting aside time in your day to join up and talk with us about what we're going to be talking about today, which is goal setting. This is a new year, so a lot of people, this is a time for reflection, time for, how did you last year? What are you doing in the coming year? And in this series, this is kind of like the third podcast in this series of goal setting and setting intentions for training. And obviously this is not just for the beginning of the year. Hopefully it's for past January 22nd or whatever the statistics say, that everyone ends at like 3 weeks after their goal or after their New Year's resolution. So this is what we're trying to prevent with this conversation. And so, you're somebody who, in the community who has not only killed the tricks, but you've killed pretty much everything you touch. You've done NASA, you've done tricking, you've done a lot of different things that we're going to get into in this podcast. So again, thanks for coming on. And
hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
I appreciate what you do. I appreciate the podcast. Thank you for setting aside time to have me on. I know how busy you are, so thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're just going to jump right into it. The first thing I kind of wanted to ask you for people who have heard your story, this podcast is going to be your story, of course, but this is going to be a bit different, even from some of the content we have of you on the app, of your seminars and things, because we're going to be speaking about all the things you've done and accomplished and plan to do through a goal setting, goal planning lens.
Mm-hmm.
And so first, just to give anybody who doesn't know the context or reminders of your journey, because you've had several knee injuries in the past, right?
Yeah.
So through tricking. So why don't we start with that? And maybe also you can introduce yourself too, maybe say where you're from and how long you've been tricking for and what you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Nick Vail. I am from Colorado, not originally, but I grew up here. I have been tricking for 18 years. Tricked on Thursday this last week, so still moving around a little bit. Not nearly at the intensity of what I used to do. Most of my tricking now is 75% warm up from the RX app, and then 25% tramp tricks, and then I go home super sore. So yeah, if I represented a tricking community, I think it would be Colorado as a whole. And so now I've transitioned out of science, which we'll talk about. I have a number of STEM degrees and did some research, and then now I'm in the financial world, which is why I'm wearing my work clothes. I came right off a client call, right onto this, and so you're catching me in my alternate uniform. I do financial planning. So I work with individuals on, just that financial planning.
Nice. Awesome. So if you could take us through your knee injuries. So
sure.
I know there were multiple. So we could start with, I guess the first one and then go from there to just the history on it first, and then we'll get into how you overcame those.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I got it written down because it's a list. My first knee injury was my right knee. It was a posterior lateral corner injury. So that would be, I had a full rupture of the PCL and the FCL, so fibular collateral ligament, popliteal tendon and ligament, both full ruptures, biceps femoris avulsion fracture. So the attachment site still had bone on it, but the bone came off of the attachment site on the fibula. Tibial plateau fracture, medial meniscus spiral tear. So I had a tear on the front side, and then also on the back side. Those are not the right anatomical terms, but
you're doing amazing.
It was like, kind of looked like a like a hook. And so, yeah, the recovery time was about 18 months, give or take, to full recovery, back to where I felt like I wasn't being restricted in any way. And that was 2013. I would say February 2013 was the injury. Surgery was March 2013. And I was not really feeling like I was back until July, August of 2014. I think I did my first like triple cork around then, and I started landing new skills. So I was on the journey to dub 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 at that point, which was like a rare thing at the time. And so I was doing like cork dub dub and doing dub dub variations again. And so that was, yeah, I'd say about 18 months, and I was back. And the surgery was long. It was like 6 hours, single surgery. Actually woke up in the middle of the surgery. That was kind of intense to like find out about, because I mean, anesthesia, I don't remember, but they stopped the surgery. My heart rate was getting a little too high. So it was pretty intense. I remember going into PT, and this guy came in like the same week as me, and he had an ACL tear. He was box jumping, and I was still non-weight bearing at the time. And so like a few months later. And so that was, yeah, the recovery was pretty rough. But
the injury was extremely significant. So for people who aren't super medical and all that, that's all good.
Yeah, sorry.
Basically, no, it's okay, because I think it needs to be highlighted that how severe your injury specifically was, and just for the sake of goal setting, because this is like an insurmountable goal. A surgery was created for your knee, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it was. Yeah, so not specifically because of my knee, but right. I was the surgery technique was something I had to consent to.
Yeah,
because it wasn't
a very new procedure.
Very new procedure, regenerative medicine. And to your point about the seriousness, in the minutes and moments afterwards, they were not really worried about me, the tricker. They were worried about me, the person. They at one point we thought that I was going to be prepped for emergency surgery to save my life. The ER that I went to, they thought we had a rupture of the femoral artery in my right knee, and so it was, we're going to save your life by taking your leg. And so, fortunately, that didn't happen. Spoiler alert. So it was very serious. I try to like be jovial, but in the moments after, it was bad.
Yeah. No, not to bring it dark. I just wanted to give it its light that it needed.
No, you're good.
So continue. So you got back 18 months in. You're hitting triple corks again, which is amazing, from not maybe being able to walk again. So that's awesome. And then take us through to your second one, and then we can talk more about overcoming that. Yeah. I
was actually at Hooked, the second Hooked, and I did a bunch of stuff to a bunch of gainers to a double cork, and I overrode. I had just moved floors, and so I went from going really hard on one floor. They were doing workshops, so I went over to a different floor, and I didn't like retime myself to that floor, and I like hypered the double cork on accident, and as I was coming around, my left heel hit the ground, and my weight shifted onto it, and it rotated. I had a subluxation on my left knee, and so that was rather minor compared to this one. I thought I actually just like had a strain or a sprain in my calf, but I had I'm less familiar with the anatomy. That's the word. The anatomy of this part of the knee, but my FCL was torn, so the LCL was torn, and then whatever attaches the fibula to the tibia, that's like area, there's some tissue there, that was it. So essentially my fibula was freestanding.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and then I had a partial tear of the the long head biceps on the outside. I don't remember what that's called. And so but it was freestanding, and so what they did was they like lashed those bones together, so I don't have a lot of movement there anymore. Gotcha. I frequently have mobility issues. This is something I work with, like when I'm doing movement stuff, through the like adamantium knees in particular. When I do the movement stuff there, I find that I have issues with that, and so I'm getting the mobility still back almost 7 years later.
That's awesome.
I almost didn't have surgery because I didn't think I was I didn't think it was that bad. And then I went and got an MRI just for due diligence, and they were like, no, we definitely need to do surgery on this.
Wow.
So that
Crazy.
was a longer, not longer, but that's the one that took me out of tricking, actually, not the right knee. Right knee, I felt like I was doing like hyper 12s on the knee that got destroyed before. And this one, I was like, I'm really not trying to swing on this. Because like when I'm swinging, turning to the left and it rotated left, it just felt off. And so I've more or less not really gone back to tricking in the same kind of way since then. That's okay. I mean, I think about tricking in a different way now. You know, my tricks are not on the floor. You know, I get my work in other ways.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to be talking about that. So so with the journey with the knee, especially after the first one,
Yeah.
what would you say? What was your process getting back, mentally, physically, emotionally, from like a goal setting standpoint? Because I know
Sure.
there was a lot that went into it,
Yeah.
but just like how did you? I mean, obviously there was a period of. I mean, these are traumatic things, and especially with
Yep.
like any injury is traumatic, and especially to the degree you had, you know. So there's a period of grief, there's a period of loss, there's a period of like fear and uncertainty, and you know. So if you could just take us through overcoming that and then getting back on the floor and doing harder stuff than you ever had, it's pretty crazy. So
Yeah, you know, I didn't have the luxury of thinking that there was going to be a short recovery. I knew that it was going to take a long time, and to some degree, this was like helpful, because I had to think out long term. You know, when it first happened, they said our goal is to get you to walk again, and then so that was my goal. My goal was just be the best walker that ever walked, and so I went into PT. So thinking of physically, I went into PT with that goal of, you know, it might take me 4 months to relearn how to walk with this new tissue, and I you know, we rebuilt my PCL, and so there was like cadaver tissue that mimicked the native tissue of a PCL, and then my body tried to repair it and like built a ligament around it, and then the middle dissolved. I got a circulation path, and so pathway, and so it's my tissue, right? And so with that was like a new understanding of where that joint was in space, and like it took a long time and of just doing basic movements, and yeah, like I didn't know if I was going to trick again, so it wasn't really on my mind. My mind was like, I just want to walk again. I'd love to be able to walk. I'd love to be able to stand on my own 2 feet. Someday run around with my wife and kids, like that would be fun, right? And so I kept my focus small. There's a movie, The Patriot, with like Mel Gibson, and he tells his kid, this is like really something you should never tell a kid, but he was like, if you aim small, you'll miss small. And he's talking about like aiming at the redcoats or whatever, you know, civil or Revolutionary War time. And so this is how he talked about like firing a gun. And that was my thought, was like, I'm just going to aim at walking. And if I miss, I'll more or less still be good. Right. And so I'm going to keep my goal small, and I'm just going to achieve that one goal. And once I could walk, then it was going to be squatting. I'm just like squatting under my body weight. So I'm going to keep my aim small, and I'm just going to do that. That's the next step. And I'm just going to stair step my way back to the mobility until I find my limit. And I didn't try to come back fast. I gave myself an extra week or two after I got cleared on everything. So I was like, this could be it. This could be like the end of my mobility. And so I'm going to give myself a little bit extra time. And that actually paid dividends, because every time I had a little bit of extra time doing the PT, let my body heal a little more, get a little bit more mobility, not try and rush to the next thing. So I'm excited to get back on the floor. You know, and then I did a backflip for my doctor at one point, and he was just like, that's incredible. He's like, I've worked on NFL players, the Blue Angels. This guy's like keynote speaker for complex knee reconstructions globally. Like, this dude is the guy. And we call him the guru up in the mountains. He's up in Vail, or he was up in Vail, Colorado. I got So I went to one of our professional teams, and this guy was like, I would amputate this. I can't do this. But there's this guy that's in the mountains. He's like a hermit. And that guy can do this, right? If anybody can, he can. And so I went up to Vail at Stedman and did this surgery. And he was like, man, you have the widest range from like the most injured to the most athletic I've ever seen. I've never seen somebody recover like this. And so I got to like talk in front of a bunch of doctors, and I did some work with a bracing company. He actually we built a brace to change the shape of my knee as I moved so that I could do and this is something he'd been working on, but like he never really had anybody to test it with.
Yeah.
In fact, the engineer that built the brace, we're getting a little off track. Sorry.
No, this is great. I love it.
The engineer that built the brace actually took his bike cables. He cut the brake cables from his bike and put that on the brace because he didn't have anything else. And that's the one I wore, right? Incredible, right? Like we scrapped this thing together. And now it's like this product line, and it's a work of art. This thing is amazing. It's the Rebound brace by Oser, I think. Okay. And so anyways, keeping my goals small allowed me to always stair step within the bounds of what my body could handle. And I never got outside of that range of tolerance that the tissue could handle. And so taking small steps was really the thing that brought me back. And I have never forgot that lesson. And it's a lesson I could have only learned when, like, if I was a car, I drove recklessly, right? When I was tricking, like I was not safe when I first approached tricking. And so after this, I was like, wait, maybe longevity is what I should be thinking about, the Justin Carney approach, right? Of I didn't want to trick forever, right? And I learned that lesson after the fact, unfortunately. But yeah, I think what it instilled in me is that even cathedrals have their first few bricks, and you build a cathedral brick by brick, right? You build a pyramid brick by brick, and that has served me so well my whole life since. Like I don't know if I'd like ask for that injury again, but I really don't want to give up what I learned, because God, I love the ability to do stuff like that now. And believe me, people tried to teach me to like take my time and stuff before, and nothing ever mattered as much, but when your knee gets turned into ground meat, right? And so yeah, it was great. From a goal setting standpoint and from understanding how I learn, it was a gift, and it just keeps giving. The dividends that this thing pays it's incredible. And so if I could take something away from a goal setting standpoint, it's that it's easy to feel like you fail when you overreach. Stacking small successes is like a hot knife to butter. I mean, you can cut through almost anything if you take small, successful steps over time. Consistency over time beats big jumps occasionally, any day of the week. And and I approach this with the workouts. Like like when I first did Desert Eagle. Mm-hmm. I took almost 16 weeks to do a 6-week workout, because I was like, I'm just gonna do this one workout until I can do it. And even if it was just doing the first few pieces, and I just kept building it into my workouts. And eventually I'm pistol squatting on something that I thought was never going to do that. And so
that's awesome, man.
And that's what got me through the second injury too. Step by step, little by little.
That's so sick. So timeline, and obviously for the viewers, I'm very privy to his history here, so we're kind of just going straight, so like I know where to ask and all that.
Sure.
But the next thing I wanted to talk about was what is the timeline for you going from tricking and all this craziness of the multiple intense knee injuries, that you're overcoming them, and then you work for NASA? I need a roadmap too, honestly.
No worries. So what happened is a little bit of background, right? I have pretty bad ADHD. And we found this out in like the early 2000s. I'm 34. And so I was in high school and middle school in the early 2000s. And so the school system was so hard for me. I dropped out of high school and went in the Army, because like I was a gifted athlete, and so might as well be a gifted athlete with armor on. And and so I left the Army pretty traumatized, as one does. And so at that point, I didn't have an education to fall back on, 10th grade math at best, 10th grade reading. Like I really was not all that. I just had not been developed in that way. And then I had a lot of trauma from the experiences. And then I poured that into tricking. I didn't know it at the time. I had some PTSD that I was dealing with. Probably drove my tricks, actually, is probably why I was a little bit of a reckless tricker. And then what I learned in tricking is that we don't land something one time and then walk away. We do it till we can't do it wrong. And afterwards, after all these injuries happened, and I had spent a lot of time like working on the Colorado community, I tried a few businesses, they did their job, but they weren't sustainable. It's like, how do I put all this together, right? How do I take that next step? And so I decided I'm going to just conquer this learning thing that I've struggled with my whole life. And so I took that approach of we don't do things once and then move on. And that's how a lot of the education system's built out. You do your homework once and then you move on. And in science, that typically doesn't work, at least not if you want to take it to the next level. Right. And so what I did was math actually is what taught me this. I couldn't believe it, right? I was, I had dropped out. I was pretty self-conscious about that. I was like, I just need to redo high school, if that's what it is. I went back to a community college. Colorado's great. They pay for a lot of your community college if you go. The credits are guaranteed transfer. The state universities have to take them.
That's awesome.
And so I went in and started doing, I barely tested into college algebra, which is like 10th grade algebra. I had to take a lab with it because I didn't really even qualify. And so what happened was I got to my first homework assignment and I was like, all right, I'm going to keep my aim small. I'm going to do this until I can't get it wrong. And I would do that homework assignment and I would do the processes, because math is pretty at that stage anyways, math is pretty rote. And so, it'd be like factoring or something. And I would just factor that same problem over and over and over. And then I'd write it on the whiteboard, go to sleep. First thing I did in the morning was do it for speed. Because you do a B twist, well, you want to jump higher, you want to twist harder, you want to open up to land, do the next thing. And so I would train it for speed, train it for skill. And then I took that with me to the next class, did that with trig. And trig's a bunch of different rules and stuff. And I would draw diagrams and then I would erase them and draw them again and erase them and draw them again. Same obsessive kind of approach that we take to tricking.
Yeah.
And then to calculus. And I was like, wait, it dawned on me in Calc 1. I was like, all this is just a hard Calc 1 problem is just a bunch of little Algebra 2 problems. But I had repped it so much that it was each of the little Algebra 2 things, I was just putting them together as a combination, right? Taking a derivative was just a combination of Algebra 2 problems. I was like, okay, well, I can do this, right? Mm-hmm. And then so I same thing. I'd put up the hardest thing from yesterday and I just rep it for speed, and my hand would cramp sometimes as writing so fast. And so Calc 2, Calc 3, same thing. Calc 3 is just a bunch of little Calc 1 and 2 problems. I was like, okay, I can do this, right? I started outperforming the kids that had gone to STEM school. Their parents were physicists. They were built for this, and I was outperforming. I'm 27, 28 years old, have ADHD. I dropped out of high. This shouldn't be happening, right? I shouldn't be doing this. And so I realized, I was like, okay, well, so I start taking linear algebra, some of the harder classes, ODEs, ordinary differential equations. ODEs is just a bunch of Calc 3 problems. I'm like, well, that's just a bunch of Calc 1 and 2 problems, which are just a bunch of Algebra 2 problems, right? And they're I've trained for this, right? Yeah. And I kept the view, my goal small. Linear algebra was really hard. That was a new world. I was like, what am I even doing? And so it was just, Excel for nerds. It was Excel before Excel, it's all tables and stuff. Yeah. And so before I realized that I had done more math than most engineers do, right? And so I was like, man, I like this. I really like this. I started proofing, started doing proofs, and I was like, same thing, right? Your proofing methods, there's only a few of them. You get really good at them, rep them out, and then you can just start proving things. And now if we believe a shoe plus a shoe is not a chair, well, then we have to believe this math, right? And so, because it comes out of logic like that. And so I got an associate's degree in math from a local community college, associate's degree in physics. I was really good at physics. I remember in my physics 3 class, this was like modern physics. So it's like relativity, quantum mechanics, that kind of thing. I remember like bringing new information to the class because I was just reading on my own. Like I was reading papers now on my own. And so I was like, I like this. And so I went to undergrad. And at this point I had started to like, kind of like got the repping thing, but I'm like, what's our version of a session, right? Like there's got to be a session here somewhere, right? Like, and so I started looking for a session in all this science, right? And it came in the form of engineering projects. And so I looked and I'm like, okay, well, we all go show up at the physics lab and we just start like doing stuff, putting together random things, learning things, trying things out, right? Mm-hmm. Coming up with solutions to problems that we had, learning to code, whatever. Well, so the community college I was at had a program called Space Grant, NASA Space Grant. And so we started building payloads because I applied, I got on. The bar, it's a low bar for that particular program. They're like, are you breathing? Are you in a program? Can you, we'll teach you, right? And so we start building payloads for high altitude balloons, and we were looking at like spectra in the atmosphere. And so they just send a balloon up, you do your science, and then it drops. And you spend all semester building this box that does things. I did like 4 or 5 of those launches. We looked at an eclipse. Like it was really cool. Awesome. Well, I was like, okay, so this is a session in science. I'm good at sessioning. I'm great at sessioning. In fact, not just good at it, I'm great at it. And so I started like, what are some other things we can do? And so then I got into sounding rockets. And so those are like short. They're like this one in particular went up to like 70 kilometers was the top of the parabola. So we call it apogee. And so we were doing like environmental payloads, we were doing sensor payloads, different things like this. And I did, I think, like a launch or 2 of those. And then I was like, this is fun. And so then we went into the harder rocket. So Roxat C was the smaller one. Roxat X was the bigger one. And that went up to about 100 kilometers and actually despun. And so we got access to microgravity. And so we're like testing how to deorbit space trash and trying to build up charge and impact like aerospace materials because they're more or less don't react to that. And so we were trying to find ways to like slow down space trash because that's a problem. Yeah. We took a picture of the curvature of the Earth, which was really cool. I'm like, we took that picture. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's really crazy. That's
yeah,
awesome.
It's nuts. And these are all NASA projects, right? And so I'm like, I think I like found something here. And so I go to undergrad, right? I go up to CU Boulder, and I'm like, I think I found what I like to do. I really like astronomy, space. Mm-hmm. Let's use all this math and physics, right? Let's get scrappy because astronomy is pretty scrappy. It's not just like chalkboard doing logic. It's really scrappy. You have to like figure out solutions, and you're looking through things, and you got to like, it's wild. And so I went into the astrophysics undergrad program, and that was prep for a PhD in astrophysics, and I was going to do that at CU. And so I got onto staff on a project there called STEAM, and that is a satellite that takes photos of spectra that comes out of the sun. And so we were looking at the subphotospheric photospheres of the edge of the sun, like what we think of as the surface. We're looking at like underneath the surface. We're looking at the physics and the plasma under there. And my job was actually to read this paper and interpret it and make sure that our testing environment properly matched the space environment. And so we were building like radiation beams, and we were like blasting stuff with radiation in the lab. And and like we're blasting this chip that's like worth more than my degree is. And I'm just like, please don't break it. Please, like, if my physics is wrong,
for like durability, basically.
Yeah.
That's
durability.
awesome.
And then like, are we getting what we're supposed to be getting on the back end with like the code? So we had to write the code from scratch, right? And I'm like, geez, I just really hope that we did this right, because this thing's worth more than my whole degree. And like, if I screwed up, we just broke this thing, right? And we didn't, thankfully. And so,
Nice.
so that, that before I knew it, I'm like, how did I get here? Same
Yeah.
question is like, how did this happen? Right.
Right.
And, this is about the time of the pandemic. So 2020. And I'm finding myself waking up 5 a.m. I'm going downstairs into this closet that we turned into an office. And I'm like working from, God, felt like 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yeah.
I'm eating all 3 meals down there. My fiance, partner at the time, wife now, I'm like, we're in quarantine. I can't leave. And I never see her.
Yeah.
What's this going to be like when I'm out in the world? Right. And so I was like, what do I want? Do I want a PhD? Which I think I can do. Like, I'm pretty sure I could do it at this stage. I have the research experience.
Definitely, yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm in graduate classes at this point. Like I'm a senior. I'm taking grad courses. I'm like, I think I can do this. Got more math than I know what to do with still. And so, I was like, I think I want a healthy relationship, and I think I want a healthy like marriage. More than I want to do a PhD. I think I just like thought, well, that's the dub. That's the triple cork. I should obviously do that, right? I didn't stop to think about it until I was never seeing my wife. It's like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? And so, it occurred to me. I was like, okay, well, maybe I've learned the lesson, right? Maybe I should just take a break, just take a step back, right? Maybe I learned this lesson, right? I did it, right?
Yeah.
I went from being a dropout, didn't understand how to learn things, to I have to say no to this PhD program because I've got 4 years of research experience through NASA projects, a year on staff. Maybe I learned the lesson, and I think I did. And going back to the right knee injury, it was just keeping the goal small, keeping it achievable, not looking past that, aim small, miss small, right? And this is every goal that I set was set that way. And so that ultimately set me on the path that I'm on now.
That's awesome. But also, I feel like we could tease out, you did an important thing, I think, because you're also, you went from, okay, the small steps get me there, but then you were at a crossroads where you had to decide what you wanted in life,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people deal with that because it's not just training in isolation. Unfortunately, it's not like Dragon Ball Z or something. Like we got other things to do. Like we can't just be training like 24/7 or doing whatever it is that you're passionate about 24/7, right? So it's like, that's another part of goal setting. And that's why in the beginning, I was talking about your injury in regards to like the physical, mental, and emotional pieces to it, And so if you only look at a goal as like, I'm going to achieve this at all costs, are you willing to pay that cost? That's an important question to ask earlier than later, of course, So I love that was brought out as well, and that you made the choice that was right for you, which is awesome.
To that point, as far as the emotional side, I really haven't touched on that. You mentioned that there's grief, there's loss, all of that. And my upbringing didn't lend itself to a lot of emotional awareness. Yeah. And my wife this is where her genius comes out. Brilliant, smarter than I am, for sure. Like way smarter than me. But her EQ is incredible. And over the course of the relationship, she started teasing this stuff out. And when we were talking about injury and whatnot, she never really knew me as a tricker. Mm-hmm. I think she maybe saw me do tricks once or twice, before it was time, it was just recovery. And, she pinpointed a few things. She's like, I think there's some trauma here. There's grief, there's loss. Your identity's changed. Like what happens when you have such a traumatic injury and my tricks were me, right? Like I was my tricks. This is my contribution to the world. And this is who I am.
It's what you've cultivated for years and decades.
At that point, a decade of my life, maybe more. And it was the only thing that I had been successful at, right? Like this was my identity in a very formative years of my life. And that started me down my therapy path, as I was like, well, if I want to be good at tricking, I I wanted to get a coach, and that coach was Dan Perez, right? Like he was kind of my mentor in the technique area. And then when I wanted to be good at math and physics, I found people that were better that could mentor me. And I was like, well, maybe I need to get all this trauma out. I had the trauma from military and before, trauma from the injury, loss. I had identity stuff like, who am I without my tricks? And so let's start dealing with some of this. And that led me down a CBT, DBT, EMDR path. And that's what probably the last 6 years has been.
Can you give the acronyms for the viewers?
Yeah, sorry. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm not a licensed therapist, but this is my understanding of it, is you think about how your thoughts and your emotions impact your interpretation of the world. And then DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. So that's how your words impact how you're feeling and you're interacting with the world. And then EMDR is not totally sure. That's trauma therapy. It's like bilateral stimulation, that kind of thing. My understanding of it is that you excite the parts of your brain that are traumatized. You sit with it. You allow your body to process it. And then when you come back down, the like trauma waves are lower. So the spikes are lower. The highs are lower and the valleys are higher. And so you just start getting into a zone of tolerance. And all those things combined raised my EQ, allowed me to interact with my genius of a wife and have like a healthy relationship. And I mean, I'm not going for the, hey, fix me, I'm broken reasons. It's more so being good is not enough for me. I want to be great.
Yeah.
In everything that I do. Right. And so now it's about how do I can't tell you how many times my therapists have said, you don't need to come to these sessions anymore. And I'm like, I'm not good enough. I still don't understand the differences between anger and resentment. I still don't understand what's coming up in me from years ago, right? Like let's get it all out, right? Like I want to get that filter out. And so I've stuck with it, and it's landed at me where my wife and I have like communication sessions where we have a communications coach that teaches us about like emotionally focused therapy. So we just like start sampling all these therapies and like,
that's awesome.
And to their credit, these therapists are now coaches. They're not necessarily trying to fix something wrong with us. They're about enhancing our interactions and making sure that I'm hearing her, she's hearing me. We're always tweaking our language, making sure that I'm never like emotionally hijacking or gaslighting or nothing. No bad habits get in, so no bad habits can get instilled and trained. And so and this is something we want to show for our kids, right? Like we want to show them that just because we're adults doesn't mean we're perfect, and we can always be better. And it matters enough to me to have a healthy relationship that I'm going to continue to see a therapist, even if they're like, you don't need it. And I'm like, but I want it. Right.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly.
And I've worked on getting the grief out. I've worked on understanding who I am, absent tricks, and my identity. I don't feel like I have trouble connecting to the person that was doing dubs, and I have trouble connecting to that person. I just feel like they're different versions.
That's interesting. Like, do you feel, and not to get into a therapy session or anything, but do you feel evolved from this person, or do you feel distant, or like, what do you mean by that? Just so I feel like a better picture.
I feel like me and tricking was like a Charmander. Me in school was a Charmeleon, and then now I feel like a Charizard.
Nice.
I feel like it's not that I'm not this person. It's just, it's hard. Like if you think about the evolution, like it's probably hard for a Charizard to connect totally to a Charmander. Yeah. And so, there are still all these pieces that are there. The identity is still there, but it's, I don't like the word evolved necessarily. It gives you this like position of power or something. I don't like that. Yeah. But I think I have come to terms with the grief, and I've come to terms with the loss, and used it as the fertilizer for the soil to grow something new, essentially.
Nice. Like
so,
Phoenix.
Yeah, more like that actually. Yeah. There you go. Because it was traumatic and explosive, and literally explosive. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but I learned the lessons,
Awesome.
I think.
Yeah.
I think.
No. Well, we're always learning lessons, I think, and that's the beauty of life, in my opinion. I mean, that's why, with TrickStrong, I'm trying to help people, give them the tools to perform what they want to do in their lives without limitations, and it's not about
Yeah,
what I want them to do. It's about what,
sure.
empowering. And that's what the fire is, in the logo. The fire is the passion that you have, and the unity is that circle around it. And that's also a Japanese calligraphy sign that it's an enzo, and it represents one moment in time, because when you draw it, it's never complete. So
Mhm.
I guess I have to have my hand up here. But when you draw it, the circle doesn't ever complete. And it's just a calligraphy thing that says that we will never be complete, but we have this one moment to do our best in, so that's life. And it's awesome that you're so committed to just getting better. And I mean, that's why I'm talking to you right now, because I love it.
Trying.
Yeah. So how does this take you to your current work now? So you're in financial planning.
Sure. I'm in financial planning, and that was a meander as well. So coming out of all of this, I was like, well, I still want to do work in tricking. I think I've gained some new skills, to put it moderately. And so, but how do I apply them? And for those that don't know, physics and mathematics is not about finding a number. It's about thinking about a problem. It's about abstract problem solving. And so I think all good science comes from a good evaluation. And so I set off to do that. And so I spent about a year talking to people like yourself, in fact, talking about what problems they're seeing in tricking, what solutions would look like, what would a better environment look like to them. I spent about a year doing this, having conversations. I landed on 3 problems that I thought that I was maybe able to impact. And my business partner at the time, Reese Moore, I think he's up with Trick Dynamics in Connecticut.
Yep. Love Reese.
Reese is a good man. Yeah. And we started honing in on and he's also a physicist. So we vibe and nerd in the same way. And so we came to the conclusion that there was maybe one that we could work on, and that we ought to work on, because the other ones just weren't our fight. We could be champions of it, but it's not our fight. And so I leaned into that for about another 6 months. And what we came to was that the business environment in tricking is not as favorable for us as it is for other movement sports like gymnastics, cheer, that kind of thing. This is not a big brain idea, right? I didn't need a math degree for this. So it just happened that those are the tools I used. And so what came out of this was we decided that, there's a central data problem in tricking. It's hard to make informed decisions. It's hard to make use of the instruments that are available to other businesses, meaning like loans, financing, things like this. And so we set out to try and solve that problem, build a centralized database, aggregate best practices, foster a conversation that allowed for us to build a better environment. And again, we didn't know what that environment was going to look like. We just wanted to set the stage for it. And we've been working on that, or we did work on it for a long time after that. What felt like a long time was months and months, maybe about a year. And then out of that inquiry came what's called the Tricking Data Den. And that company still exists. Brees and I were partners in this. And we worked on that. We have agreements with verbal agreements with different tricking companies, brands, gyms to share information, aggregate them, start standardizing our reporting practices, in fact. And we've been doing this work for a while now behind the scenes. And so as we were doing this, it occurred to me, I hadn't reduced the problem to its smallest fundamental unit. We came up with a really elegant solution to this problem, and created a situation where we could have money injected into tricking.
Sure.
The details take a while to explain, but ultimately we had access to capital. We have access to a lot of capital. Unfortunately, the financial world, fortunately, actually, the financial world requires due diligence. You can't just loan out a bunch of money. You can't loan out $1 million. You just can't do that, right? You have to do due diligence on the people and the places that you're loaning money out to, you're investing. some people can invest haphazardly, and that's like on them. But the people that we're working with that believe in this mission are like, we're fiduciaries. We have to do due diligence. And I'm like, great. I'd rather you were looking out for your clients. We're going to look out for ours. We don't want to trade ownership. Like, we have a lot of agreements about this, right? And so to do due diligence, we need the data. And so that's going to take a while, take a few years, in fact. We have to be able to compare businesses to themselves over time, which requires standardized reporting and a data set of high integrity. And then we also have to be able to compare them to each other in like a black box kind of way, because the industry is so small, you can't be giving away trade secrets, but you do have to be able to do the analysis. Mm-hmm. It's a complex problem. It takes an abstract approach, right? So I think we were well suited for it. And so out of this, I realized that like the individuals that were running the businesses, we were asking them to take a lot of risk. And in the industry, there's already a lot of risk. Starting a business in a fledgling industry,
yeah,
this is no surprise to you. I'm preaching to the choir here. You are taking a risk to, prime years of your business life to build this thing for the community, for the industry. And so it's a big ask. And I realized like it's not exactly fair to do that. And so I set out on another mission. I was like, okay, well, how do we solve that problem? How do we make solid the foundations of tricking so that we can take risk? And risk and reward go hand in hand, right? Yep. If you want more reward, you have to take more risk. You see this in the stock market. We see this in a lot of ways, right? And so tricks, yeah. And so I started learning about the investment world. My brother-in-law is a CFP. He has a wealth management firm. Learned a lot from him. My father-in-law was a wealth manager. Started asking a bunch of questions, learning about the industry, getting licensed, certified, taking series exams. And what I realized was I needed to build something that could do just that, make solid the foundations of the financial foundations of the industry on an individual level. And so I set out, started negotiating, started seeing if I could build a practice somewhere. And I landed at a firm that would allow me to have an independent practice that I owned. I could choose my clientele. I could choose my mission. I could choose my fee structure. So we had to make financial planning accessible. It needed to be owned by a tricker. We needed to be fiduciaries, which means we're required by law to act in the client's best interest. And then we had to have an open architecture to broker out whatever we needed for those clients. And so the company that allowed me to hang the licenses and do this was Northwestern Mutual. And so that's where I house my planning practice now. Unfortunately, in the process, compliance reasons, I had to give up ownership in the data den. And so Reese is running this. He's got a team. I volunteer time to make sure that I'm still giving input. I'm the sounding board for him, still driving it forward from a vision standpoint. But it's volunteered time. I can only do so much. Yeah. There's no money being exchanged. I mean, the company is not a for-profit company, Data Den anyways, there's no money being exchanged anywhere. So, but what I can do now is I can set on my new mission, and my new mission is to set the stage for when Data Den has finished its mission. And that stage looks like finding 500 trickers that want to add something like $200,000 of personal net worth through financial planning, which is what my wife and I have been focused on for a while in our personal lives, is the foundations of our finances. And that's an aggregate $100 million of personal net worth in the tricking community in the US. And if we do that, we have the capital and the collateral, but most importantly, the education and the skill set to use that. This will percolate. We think this will percolate up into the business environment, enhance what we're doing, give us the ability to act in a very targeted, focused way. Our businesses will have benefits. Hopefully, our businesses will have. We're already seeing we're inputting benefits in businesses, tricking businesses that don't exist in the gymnastics community, not at large, anyways.
Yeah.
And so this is working on an individual level, and it's already working in the business environment. And so the thinking is, and it's still an open question, right? I don't know. But the thinking is that if we have built this capital, all these skills in the community from the ground up, we're not looking for millionaires. We're not looking for millionaires. We're trying to create them,
Yeah,
right? So that they can invest in tricking, invest in our sport and our community. We can take the community and turn it into a working industry, and then make use of the things that DataDen's doing. We can make use of the data. We can go to financial institutions, use the capital instruments, take risks from a solid position. And so that's how my personal practice kind of was born out of DataDen. And now I just like am a cheerleader on the side for DataDen. Like, whatever you need, man, I am there. And unfortunately, strictly on a volunteer basis, but it is what it is. And I mean, their success is our success as a community. And so like we want DataDen to work. And so this is why you see me in the suit, and this is what I do. It's a grueling life, I'll be honest.
Yeah, you're going hard.
I'm going really hard. Yeah, like 60 hours a week. You know, it's got to be accessible. So like, you know, I don't charge upfront fees. You're not out any cost for planning. Like it is very much an open architecture, and it's a very accessible architecture because we're working with people that they didn't have, like my father-in-law, to put his arm around us and be like, this is how you do finance, right? Like a lot of the trickers come from rougher backgrounds. And so we can be that firm, you know, we can be that firm for trickers. We can use the hindsight of the rich and powerful as their foresight, and we can give them access to those same tools, give them a seat at the table. This is how you change the face of generational wealth in America. This is how you change the face of who has the money in tricking, right? The people on the floor, the people in the trenches. This is where the money should be flowing. And that's what we're committed to. And my mentors are maybe not always so excited and happy that I'm not chasing people that are making a ton of money.
Right.
I don't care. Right. Like, and we're doing really good work. I'm telling you, I'm seeing networks go up, debt go down.
That's awesome.
I am so excited to have found associates that I work with that are aligned with this mission. We are pouring every moment we have into building the financial foundations, and I couldn't be happier with what we're doing. I wake up so energized, exhausted, and energized. It's an odd dichotomy here, but I'm expanding my education. I'm increasing the offerings. I'm making sure that we are breaking down the barrier of wealth so that it can flow into tricking. This is how all of this has culminated to this. And I still go
really.
Aim small, miss small every day. Aim small, miss small.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny. And I'll still ask you, you know, your why in this mission. I think it's pretty, you know, maybe it's clear, maybe it's not. And that's why I don't want to assume. I just want to hear it from you. But then I found myself thinking like, I mean, I also became a doctor of physical therapy for very similar reasons and dedicated a lot of my life to my education in helping athletes in this sport and in adjacent sports and performers in general to do what they want to do in life. So it's just awesome to see because, you know, I started when I was 15 or so, and I think it's very similar for you since we're like the same age and been tricking for almost the same amount of time. So to go from that and that mindset and that life to where we are right now, and really in the beginning to middle stages of like fighting this good fight still. But it's very interesting. I just wanted to comment that. I just find it very interesting.
I do talk to a lot of trickers now on a very personal level, and it can't be overstated the impact that TrickStrong has had. I mean, I have people that I talk to that we sit down, we go through what their goals are, short, mid, long term. We talk about their debt situation, their income situation. How do we plan with what they got? How do I meet them where their feet are? And I can't tell you the details, but like there are people that literally cite TrickStrong where they're like, look at the work they're doing. I can be a PT and I can do this work in tricking. We need a TrickStrong in every state. That happened Friday. I met with somebody and he was like, we need a TrickStrong in every state. And like, it is incredible the impact that just this platform has had. I mean, I'm a believer through and through for sure. So thank you for taking the leap of faith from a 15-year-old dude, however old you are now.
33.
I should know this.
It's all good.
and just committing, right? Like committing to your passion and committing, and we are better for it, right? We need people to do that. And so thank you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I would love to do it. And similar to you, obviously it's hard, but we know what we're doing it for, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's
really hard.
Very, very rewarding. Very rewarding. And
no lies. It is very rewarding.
Yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, if you feel comfortable and want to share why, because I think that's important, because you have so much passion, obviously, for what you're doing. And I think it's been, you've poked it out here and there, but like, what is your passion for doing all this right now? And where do you see it going in the future?
I would say that I didn't really have like a good role model growing up, at least not in the ways that like I needed. I had some role models, but like it wasn't really what I needed right at the time. So tricking is like the big brother, the dad, the role model that I really didn't have to teach me how to reach my apex form. And so I'm committed to building an environment where tricking can reach more people to do that same thing. And so everything that I focus on is about adding services, adding to the environment that allows tricking to help people thrive. And everything that I do can be broken down to that, from, working on the tricking tribe to help build the tricking tribe's why was to build the environment. To cultivate the environment for tricking to thrive in Colorado. I think we did that.
Definitely.
And then now
it's like the capital now.
And any analysis of the US tricking has to account for Colorado. It just does.
Always,
right?
Always.
And so now I think about it in very much the same way. The Data Den was about creating the environment for the businesses to thrive. Now my focus is to create the environment for the individual to thrive. And it's hard to have a more like pound for pound impact per action than improving people's financial situation in an accessible way, in an approachable way, in an education way. And so, everything that I do is now focused on one of those levels, whether it's help foster the environment for tricking to thrive, for the businesses to thrive, for the individuals to thrive. It's the why, right? And the how becomes so obvious when I look at my skill set and I look at like my network and the people that I know, people I've had that have put their arm around me and said, hey, this is, let me show you the way in some ways. And for me, it makes a lot of sense how I've now, with the tricking tribe and Charlie, working with Charlie on that, it was about how do we create the community outside of tricking that keeps people in tricking, right? When they're injured, how do they bridge that gap? How do they not fall out? How do they move here because the environment is so good? And that's what happened. We had this mass exodus. And then we like got people like Ethan moved, and then like created people like Levi. Like something worked, right? Something worked.
Definitely.
And then with Data Den, it's like, how do we create the environment for the businesses to thrive? And then the how was like, okay, well, data and coding a database from ground up. Like I watched on Saturday, these guys just like coding like crazy, building out these databases. And then now, how? Well, helping people learn the secrets, not really secrets. It's just more put it in an understandable, communicate financial success in a understandable and approachable way, small goals. You'd be surprised what you can do saving $100 a month, and like really putting that in the forefront of the tricker's face and like helping them over time do that. And that's the how. And then the what is that we end up using the Simon Sinek why, how, what. The what is, that we get better tricking in general. We get better tricking if we do any of these three things, but instead let's focus on all of them, right? We can interact at the community level, we can interact at the business level, and we can interact at the individual level, and consistent efforts will do that. And so that's the why. And you'll have to hold me out of this sport cold, because there's a lifetime of work here. And I said earlier, my tricks are not on the floor anymore. I think I said it in a workshop or two. It took an injury nearly killing me to understand that my best tricks were not on the floor. They were a high five. You know, the younger tricker needed a high five. He didn't need to see a triple cork. He didn't even know what that was at the time. They needed a high five. They needed an advocate. They needed a role model. And these are the best tricks we have. You know, it just you're not going to convince, no one's going to convince me otherwise, right? The best tricks we have are a high five, showing people that you care, being there for them in the dark moments, in the difficult moments. Most of your tricking happens off the floor. And so we need to lean into that, even if the floor is a little more fun, you know?
No, that's so beautifully said. So awesome.
Thanks.
Very, very, very sick. I'm almost speechless, but not quite, because I want to transition a little bit into your own training. You know, so
still training.
Obviously, you know, we're very passionate about this, and I just want to know, like, what you're doing from a physical standpoint. I know that you're on the app.
Yeah.
I know that you're using the TrickStrong RX app, but I also know that you're going to sessions and training tricks themselves as well. So, like, yeah, if you give us a little insight as to what you're doing currently for your training and how you view health and longevity at this point for your tricking career.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't know why we call it that. There's no money in it yet, right?
There's really not.
It's coming though.
Yeah, it's coming. And so the way that I think about training, what I do is I use the app as like my home base. It's the base of my workouts. Nice. So whether it's a warm up or it's like leg day or something, I always do some portion of it out of the app. I'm never going to know more about working out than you do. And so this is your mathematics. This is your physics. And like, I know how much I know about that. And so I'm like, I'm not even going to try, really. I'm just going to offload the learning onto you. You did the hard part for me. And so appreciate you. And then, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the warm up. And then I'm going to go into like resistance training or whatever it is, right? Like we have a gym in the basement. So we built out our basement to have a gym very similar to like Justin's house. It's just, I mean, not that extensive. We're working on it. We're doing renovations this year.
I think you showed me. It was pretty hype.
It's getting there. Yeah. I need a banner. We need to put the walls up, but we got a power rack. We got Olympic weights and so, you know, dumbbell set, all that. So yeah, I do my base is through the app, and then I go into a normal like resistance training split. I use a lot of my old PT that I have just to keep stressing my body and my stability in the ways that I know work for me, because the PT programs were built specific for my injuries, right? Right. And so I still pull from those. I'm a bit of a meathead when it comes to bodybuilding, and so you know, I do that, and so I do some of the less functional lifts because I don't need to be able to move in the same way I used to. And so I mostly approach sessions from like a community standpoint. My goal is to always have my fingers on the pulse of tricking. I think if you're doing work in tricking, you should know what the community is interested in. You should know what the direction is that they want. I try and listen, talk to them. I spend most of my time talking at sessions. I do like, the one I like the most is the adamantium knees. Like that's recently, and in the last like few weeks that's been my warm up. And then I go to the tramp and I do like ball outs. I do Cody's, stuff like that. Luis got me swinging the other night, and so I was doing like double corks and that kind of thing. I do a lot of like cartwheel style tricking. So I'll do a lot of like variations, doubles. I'm working on getting my core back to where I can like drill a triple. I currently have my double to where it's like I'm doing the double between like set, double. And then I could like see it. I'm like eagling and everything. I'm like, it's about time to start tripling again. It's in there. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, I gotta do that because like it's coming if I just don't, you know.
Dude, I mean, we were at Battle of Fury and you couldn't help but just, you were barely doing any tricks on the trampoline, and then you just started doing like 0-2 and all this kind of stuff. It just escalated within like 10 minutes. It was so fun.
Yeah, it literally your fault. Like
from
You were
It went
like,
from like flash kick to that. Like, I'm like, okay.
yeah. You were like, you should do like a gainer, and I did like a gainer switch, and then I was like, oh, I could swing that. Like, you should do gainer switch cork, and I did gainer switch, and then accidentally double cork, and I was like, let me try that, and so thank you for that.
Small steps.
Because I wouldn't have tried it if you were not like, hey, do this.
I knew not to ask it from the beginning. Can't ask it it's too much. You gotta wean it in. I poked the bear a little bit, yeah.
And it worked. So
Nice.
I have terrible boundaries around tricks, so it worked well.
That's awesome.
But that's most of my training, and my wife will get on me if I'm not working out and I'm not training. She'll be like, hey, you should go lift things and set them down. I was like, okay, fine.
Nice.
And so we like focus on learning to cook new things so that we keep the diet rotating, because I will just fall into my meathead days and I'm chicken, rice, broccoli, and so and there's more to health than chicken, rice, and broccoli. So yeah, I probably get up at 5 every day. So yeah, just taking me through a day. I get up at 5. I'm eating by like 5:30. I'm cooking that meal down here, working out by like 5:45 probably. Done by like 6:15, 6:30. Shower ready, out the door by 7:30, usually 7:30, 7:15, 7:30. At the office, client meetings through. When did I get done tonight? When did I call you? It's like 5:45, 6, something like that. And then after that, it's studying for new licenses, whatever the next stage of education is. And then sometimes playing some games. There will be times when my wife will like close the book and she'll be like, you need to chill. And so call your brother, get on with like the guys from I play games with the guys from Tennessee, the Tricksgiving guys.
Yes.
And so currently we're on, if anybody's on Starship Troopers Extermination, we are currently fighting for the Federation, for the glory of the Federation, the Bug Menace. So we play some Valorant.
If there's some sort of handle or whatever, or gamer tag, say it, unless you don't want to.
No, I you know what my gamer tag is.
Oh, okay, okay. No, you don't have to say it. You don't have to say it. It's fine.
Yeah. I don't know if there's like kids on here. So but no, actually, so a friend of mine, he's a tricker. Janelle is he's from Florida. He's like big in the art world. He's the one who he did like Sexy Waluigi. If that's like him, and he went viral and everything. Well, his lesser known masterpiece is Sexy Thanos. It's an abomination and it's hilarious. And so I've taken this as my gamer tag. And
he's told me this before our meeting today, and I still haven't looked at it. So I don't know if I put something inappropriate on this podcast or not. Whatever.
You can't unsee it.
But we'll find out after this.
We'll find out
with you guys.
But yeah.
Like,
so but yeah, anything from StarCraft, Starship Troopers, Valorant, zombies, Age of Empires, whatever takes my mind off of what I'm doing just long enough to chill. So yeah, but that's a day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I think we went through a lot. We went through your whole life story and how you've made goals for yourself in every
the important parts.
Yeah, the important parts, of course. And so, yeah, just in closing, I want to just get some of your advice, just for anybody setting a goal. I know we've gotten that, but maybe in a consolidated form of like from point A to point B of the first thought or idea of, I might want to do something to execution and beyond.
Yeah, I'd
3
say,
minutes, go.
No, I would say, hitting a goal is like learning a recipe and finding a recipe. Little ingredients along the way, so little actions over time are going to pay a lot. And so the best skill you have here is consistency. Progress over perfection all day long, right? If we wait for the perfect action, we often never act. And so just start and take self-inventory every time you do that action. If you get 1% better every day, then you will move mountains in a short period of time. It'll feel like you're not moving a lot initially, but it's like a freight train. The first parts of a freight train is just starting to move, right? And then once it gets going, it's hard to stop. It's really hard to stop. And so to someone starting a new goal, I would say dream big, really, and then break it down to smaller and smaller pieces and use consistency, leverage consistency to your advantage. You need many days of consistent action to get further than you think you can, but there's nothing you can't do, really. You can change your mind, you can change your brain, you can change your heart and soul if you want to. Our stars are not written, and we get to write them, essentially. And so anytime that I choose a new goal, the first thing I do is I think, is my time frame unreasonable? Because there are no unreasonable goals, there are only unreasonable time frames. And so I pick based on what I want to do, I break it down to like smaller and smaller sub goals, and I just start hitting those sub goals. I find some consistent action I can take every day and just grind it out. I'm not smarter than the next guy. Like, I am not smarter than the people that I outperformed in physics and math. I was just grittier is all it is. So pair your grit and your consistency with your goal, and find the next step. Just take a step every single day. If today's not a day where you can go hard, rest. Tomorrow's a day you can go hard. And so rest can't be overstated, I'm sorry. But really, I thoroughly believe that small actions consistently get it done.
You've proven it.
I guess so. And to anybody out there that would like help on anything, like, reach out. I am more than willing to have a conversation, even just talk about your goals and like help you build a plan. I am about it. I love it. I love seeing people go from 9,000 to Super Saiyan, really. Like, I really like seeing people go from like really struggling to figure out the next step to looking back on their life and saying, I don't even recognize that guy. I really enjoy that. And so, yeah, open book, reach out. I'll give you my number. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, we could start with some socials if you want to say those.
Yeah, find me on Facebook. It's just my name, Nick Vail. It's my LinkedIn shot, and so I'm like leaning against a brick wall, smiling. And then I don't really use Instagram, but I will eventually check it throughout the week, like probably 3 times a week. It's at the Vail CO, the Vail Co. Those are really the only 2 socials that I use, unfortunately. I mean, and if you're a professional, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. But
awesome.
And then if you are a Starship Troopers person, let me know. We're always looking for more troopers for the Federation.
Nice. Thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you, man.
I appreciate you. This is awesome, and I think a lot of people can get tons of value out of this conversation. So nothing you can't do if you don't break it down into really tiny bits. Thank you so much.
Of course. No, thank you. And yeah, kudos to you, man. The platform is amazing. I'm a huge believer. I think that there's something on here for everybody, really. And I think you're criminally undercharging, but I believe in the program, and I'm happy that you've chosen an accessible path. Really, it's, you're doing the work. This is the work we need. This is how we build a cathedral, is selfless actions like what you've done. And so help. My call to the people out there really is like, let's build this thing. Let's find, everybody has a training partner that could be using TrickStrong. So let's go find them.